Hi, welcome to the 12 mini makes of Christmas. If you're not quite ready for Christmas yet, then don't worry. We've got lots of ideas, hands-on arts and crafts and activities that you can take part in, and the whole family can join you with them. All the activity ideas are part of our Nature School resources on the PECT website. So if you like what you're doing today, head over there and there's lots more ideas under our winter section to get you ready for Christmas. So today's mini make is all around leaves, and we're going to make them into leaf wreaths. So there's lots of different ways of doing it. We're going to show you two today. A really simple, quick one that you can do with very young children and get them involved in collecting your leaves, drying them and putting them together into a wreath. And one that's a little bit more difficult that older children and the rest of the family can get involved with. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need are lots and lots of leaves. As you can see here, we've got lots of different colours, shapes, all from different types of bushes and trees. It doesn't really matter what you use. If you've got a preference or you want to just go for a random selection, really at this time of the year it's about what you can find in your local neighbourhood or even in your garden. With your leaves, it's a really good idea to dry them before you use them. That way we know there's nothing living on them and all that moisture's already been drawn out. So leaving them overnight in between a couple of towels, some tissue paper or some kitchen roll will just let them get rid of all of that moisture and add those together. The other thing is, you might want to use things like sprigs of bay leaves or pine or mint to add some of those delicious smells that we get in our garden. So you can add a little bit of those, obviously not too many, because you don't want them to be overwhelming. So to make a really quick and very simple wreath out of leaves, all you need in addition to your leaves is some wire. Okay, so if you take a piece of wire and you make it as long as you want it to be, and then you thread your leaves on and twist the ends together, that's a really simple way of making a wreath within a few minutes. And it's a really good hand-eye coordination task for very young children to do, but also they can choose the different colours and put them into order and lots of different activities and family fun you can have around that. If you want something a little bit more decorative and you want it to last a little bit longer, then using willow as your base is going to be a lot better for you. So here you can see I've got some willow. It's quite thin and it's been soaking in water, which makes it quite pliable. If it's freshly picked, then you don't have to soak it in water, but obviously if you're cutting it down earlier in the season and keeping it, then you're going to need to soak it again to make it more pliable. So when we're using willow, if we just run our hands down the stems in an arced way, you're just getting it thinking about where it wants to be. So once we've done that a couple of times, we're just going to bend it around to make our shape. So you can make it the size that you want to make it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move all these leaves out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. So that's about the size I want to make my wreath. And so then I'm just going to twist the end up through the middle and onto the outside. Now you're going to need a couple of different stems, all out the same kind of thickness and size, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create these gaps in the willow. So then we can thread all of our leaves into those gaps. So we can see that that's got some gaps around the top, but none around the bottom because it wasn't long enough. So I've got another piece here, and then I'm just going to add that on to this end and just carry on moving it around. So this bit doesn't have to look entirely pretty, because at the end of the day it's going to get covered in leaves, so it's not really going to be seen. But it's just to create somewhere for the leaves to sit in and keep them in place so that they don't all fall off. And equally, if we're using all these parts of nature, then we are not using using any glue or sellotape or plastics or anything like that. So it's all good. And then when we're finished with it, we can just leave it outside for nature to take back under its control, and then there's no rubbish or anything to get rid of. If you want to add something different to your wreath, then you can add things like berries, if you've got those in your garden. You could even make it an edible wreath for your birds, so you could add things on there on a daily basis for the birds in your garden if you're going to hang it outside to come and visit, especially if you're going to hang it on your front door. Lots of visitors. So I've done 2 on there now. We can see that it's starting to take shape. So you can see all those little gaps there that will be filled with leaves when they are done. And I'm just going to add one more onto the areas that are not so bad. If your willow breaks, don't worry. Just grab another piece and add it on. It's really very easy. So just finish that off, and then we can start getting. So for the eagle-eyed ones of you, you might have spotted right at the very beginning that I'd already made one of these wreaths, and it was hanging behind me. So we'll see if the one that we make together today looks as good as the one that I made earlier. Okay, so there we go. This one's got a little bit of a shape to it where the willow has naturally formed that shape, so it's going to be more of a teardrop, which is absolutely fine. If you want to make it into a specific shape, then obviously you can do that as well. You might want to check out one of our other mini makes where we're going to be doing some more willow weaving, and we're going to be looking at making stars, and that's another way of adding things on and creating your wreath. Okay, so I'm going to use this as my top. Because I'm going to use that as my top, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to tie some string to the top so that when I've finished it, I can hang it up. Obviously, if you've got a hook or something you're going to hang it over the top of and you don't need to do that, then that's absolutely fine. But it does mean that I don't have to worry about it later. Now I'm using some odd bits of wool that I've got lying around, and they're not quite long enough for what I want. So I'm just going to join the 2 pieces together, and then I can add that to my wreath. It just means that then I haven't got to cut a new piece for it to hang up. So I'm just going to thread that over just like a giant loop, because obviously you're not going to see it once it's all covered. So just tie the 2 pieces together. Okay, so that's going to be there. So I know where my top is now, and I can do my design ready to meet it. So now it's a case of picking the leaves that I want and kind of placing them into my wreath as I wish to do so. So I'm going to take some of these really lovely variated coloured leaves, and I'm just going to push them into the gaps around the willow. So I'm going to use those right at the very top, I think. And you can see I'm taking the areas where there's a gap and I'm just pushing it through and pulling it round the other side. Got another one here as well. And where you need to, just use your finger to open out those areas and then just let it push back together again, and it will just keep your leaves in place. What you don't want to do is do all this work and then when you hang it up, all the leaves fall out, because that's not what we're going for, is it? So then you keep going round and you keep adding your leaves, building up layers. So because we've got all these different strands together, we can use the front one, we can use the back one, we can use 2 together. Doesn't really matter. You kind of have a look at it, see what you like. If you don't like, take it out and start again. It's really, really that simple. And you just keep going round and pushing them in. Now, if you wanted to, you could have it so it was a bit more upright, so you would push them down, and then that way you could have it maybe as a table centre and light it up with some fairy lights or with some other decorations that you might make later on. But this one I'm going to hang up on the wall, so therefore I want it to be kind of flat. So I'm putting my leaves in between and making sure they're nicely laying down. And I'm just going to build them up. So it's a really good idea to make sure the bigger leaves are at the back with the smaller ones at the front, and then you can layer up all your different colours. So if you see just there, I've got some green, I've got some red, I've got the orange and yellow, and then I'm going to have another red on the side of this one. So I want it in that middle layer. So just going to push that in there and bring it out. There we go. Now obviously as your leaves dry further, they will change colour. So the wreath that you make today is not the wreath that you'll probably see in 2 days time or 3 days time. It will change, and that's the joy of this. The fact that you can see it changing each day, it looks totally different. If you want your leaves to last longer because you want to put it inside, then what you can do is, once you've decided what leaves you definitely want to use, is you can dip them into wax, and that will help to preserve the leaf and keep its colour as it is. That way it's not going to continue to decay now that it's fallen off the tree, and it will last you a lot longer, especially if you're indoors. The other thing is about drying out your leaves is you don't want to have lots of little mini beasts crawling around inside your home. So by drying them out, make sure that we've got rid of all of those before we start putting it together. So we can see that that's starting to come together really quickly and really nicely. So just going to put this last one in. And again, if you don't want to put leaves all the way around, you don't have to. You could just do the top part like this, so do a half one. So if we have a look at the one that I made earlier. So this is it, if you remember it on the wall behind me. There we go. And you can see how that's all the way round. And there is our wreath. So really pretty, lots of autumn colours in there, along with a few greens. And then if you add a couple of sprigs of pine in there, that's really going to make your house smell really lovely and Christmassy. So go off, have a lovely walk in the autumn weather, pick up all of those leaves, bring them back, and have a go at creating your own. We'll see you on our next mini make.